And with that, let's go ahead and do it. Hi, everyone. My name is Marty Lessman. I am the founder and chief experience officer of Workforce Connect, a platform that I designed to support workforce teams simplify, standardize, and scale workforce partnerships. It's an honor to learn alongside you all today as we speak with the founders and leaders of AdvanceNC. For those unfamiliar with AdvanceNC, AdvanceNC provides a portal for North Carolinians to build their skills to access advanced manufacturing careers and to connect individuals directly with employers across Central North Carolina. Before jumping into all things AdvanceNC, it's important to set the stage by looking at North Carolina at large. North Carolina is an advanced manufacturing powerhouse. You can see the data here that in 2024, over $3.2 billion of new investment came into the state, along with over 5,000 new advanced manufacturing jobs. CNBC has ranked North Carolina the top state for business in both 2022 and 2023, and perhaps 2024, the results might not yet be out. By 2027, a predicted 20,000 new advanced manufacturing jobs will come to North Carolina, with the majority of those jobs landing in the central region of the state. How to prepare, educate, and reskill the workforce required a plan, and I'm humble enough to say AdvanceNC is that plan. Joining me today are Margaret Roberton, the Vice President of Workforce Development at AdvanceNC, as well as Central Carolina Community College, and Erin Blakeley of AdvanceNC, the Executive Director of Workforce and Special Programs, and also with Central Carolina Community College. I've had the honor personally of working with Margaret and Erin over the last 2 years, and it's been inspiring to watch them expand their work outside of the college to create AdvanceNC, a consortium designed to best serve the Central Carolina workforce community. Margaret and Erin, in a minute, we will get into the details of AdvanceNC. I'm excited for everyone to learn about this consortium that you all have created. But first, Margaret, let's start with you. I would love for you to share about yourself, your background, what you do at Central Carolina Community College, because I do know that's a full-time job, and then also how AdvanceNC came to be a little bit, and then we'll ask Erin to share her background as well.
Sure. So, Marty, thank you for inviting us to participate this afternoon. We appreciate that. We appreciate the partnership we've had with you and your team the last good little bit and thinking about AdvanceNC and the things that we're trying to achieve. So a little bit about me. So currently I am the Vice President for Workforce Development and Chief of Staff here at Central Carolina Community College, but most relevant for today, I'm the Director of AdvanceNC. And so we'll get into some of the details about AdvanceNC as we go through, but really that is an effort to rethink the workforce ecosystem around talent development, ensuring that we've got a workforce for the existing employers and the future employers within this part of the state. So I have background with our state system office, working with employers and agencies and colleges around thinking around what does workforce mean? How do we do that better? And I've also had experiences with other community colleges within the state and within Illinois, and then some corporate background in telecommunications. So just some opportunities to think about how we address workforce, what's going on, how do we really make sure that the people who live here have opportunities, and the employers who exist here and want to exist here in the future can be successful.
Fantastic. Erin, what about you?
Thanks, Marty. I'm Erin Blakeley, Executive Director of Workforce Special Programs here at Central Carolina Community College. And then I also serve as the project manager for AdvanceNC. So all those pieces Margaret just mentioned of AdvanceNC, I spend some of my time trying to move us all in the same direction. And as we'll talk about in a little bit, we've got several different initiatives going. But everyone that's involved with AdvanceNC also has their full-time job at their college or their workforce board. So trying to keep the goals of AdvanceNC moving, and us all working together is the role I serve in that realm. But my role at Central Carolina Community College, I've been in the workforce side of the college for about 2 years now. Started with customized training, working closely with VinFast and Wolfspeed, and I'm still working very closely with Wolfspeed. And then we've got several other grants and initiatives that we're involved in the semiconductor space that I'm leading as well. And other than that, I have also worked at the state level in North Carolina with our Trustees Association. So I was, Margaret and my paths crossed way back then as well. And then I've served at Wake Tech, another community college here in the state. But most of my roles have been around project management, but I've also been on the student affairs side of things, training and development, and campus operations. So I've done a little bit of everything in the community college world in North Carolina. But workforce development was the one piece I didn't know. So I decided to jump into that a couple years ago, and it is definitely a different world and I'm still learning, but I love it, and I love working at Central Carolina and also working with all these other colleges in AdvanceNC.
Well, it's from the outsider looking in, you both have done a fantastic job, so don't undersell yourself here today. We're excited to learn from you about the AdvanceNC components of your work. Specifically, love for you just to provide an overview today of AdvanceNC. What is it? What are you trying to achieve? Who is it? What are the skills gaps in North Carolina, and how is AdvanceNC serving the community to address those skills gaps and really bring employees to our employer partners? I would also love for you to discuss today the power of partnerships. I know AdvanceNC has brought together workforce boards, community colleges, four-year colleges, K-12 school districts, employer partners, and probably some more scattered in there. So love to learn about the consortium that you've built and how the power of the consortium serves the community better than every single college trying to do this on their own. And then finally, would love to address the future of workforce development and how you see AdvanceNC serving both the short-term and long-term goals in North Carolina. And then we are going to open this up to Q&A. So Samantha from Workforce Connect is going to be monitoring the chat. Please feel free to put questions into the chat, everyone, and we will try to address as many of those questions as we can by the end of the hour. By we, I really mean Margaret and Erin. So without further ado, I would love to learn from you all. What is AdvanceNC? Give us the overview here.
So AdvanceNC really is this idea about rethinking the workforce ecosystem, particularly around talent pipeline. So one of the things that we talk about here is, you know, both Erin and I have operated at the state level and had lots of different kind of conversations. Employers, when they come to North Carolina, they love the depth of resources that are available to them. We have 58 community colleges. We have 20 workforce boards, and we have 16 universities underneath the UNC umbrella, which is all amazing. What they don't love doing so much is navigating all of that. Thinking through, how do I not just who do I talk to, or how do I get the people that I need, but how do I make sure that I'm getting individuals with similar skill sets to fill similar positions? So that kind of alignment conversation. As we grow and develop and bring in the K-12, that just expands all the places you can connect to within this. So AdvanceNC at this highest level is really rethinking how we work together to better address that. We all were doing really good work individually. So it is not a comment on things not functioning. It's really a different perspective to say, how do we do what we were doing well better to serve the businesses and the community members within North Carolina. So at its highest level, that's really what we're thinking about.
Got it. And Erin, as we zoom into North Carolina, we're looking at a picture here of the counties of which AdvanceNC serves. Can you share with us how this region became the area of focus of AdvanceNC and this consortium that we see community colleges, workforce boards, universities, nonprofits came into fruition as well?
Yeah, so sometime between 2022 and 2023, our service area, which is 3 counties, Lee County, Harnett County, and Chatham County, we had 2 huge job announcements, one being VinFast and the other Wolfspeed. So VinFast bought a lot of land in Moncure, which is in Chatham County, right up the street from where I'm sitting right now, and had a job announcement of about 7,500 people. And then within a few months, Wolfspeed, which already had a location in Durham and the RTP area of North Carolina, they also bought land in Siler City, also in Chatham County in our service area, and had an announcement of 1,800 folks, 1,800 employees. So we are used to seeing job announcements of like 150, 200, 300 people. So no one college can train up the amount of people that those 2 companies alone needed. And that's not even talking about all the other companies that have made smaller announcements in our area and in the AdvanceNC region. So the VinFast site, we basically put a pin in it and realized that, anyone that they're going to be hiring is likely going to come from a 60-mile radius of that area. So looking at commuting patterns, that's pretty much average for our area. So that is really how we identified the other community colleges that we felt like would be a good match to help train up and recruit these employees for those 2. So if you take a pin and put it in the VinFast site in Chatham County and, do a 60-mile radius, it gives you these counties that are, that fall within that space. So that gives you 11 community colleges, the 7 workforce boards, and that gives you a 19-county footprint for AdvanceNC. So we invited all of those people to come together, and I think we're going to talk about that more in a minute. But everybody agreed to work together to meet the needs of not only those 2 companies, but all the other companies in that area.
Got it. Yes, we will talk about that in a minute, but just in case I forget to ask, tell us about those initial conversations as Central Carolina Community College had this fantastic idea of creating AdvanceNC. How did you approach those other community colleges, no less the universities who sometimes are navigating the same waters as you are?
So I think I think we initially started with just the realization to what Erin was talking to, is that the employers announcing and growing in North Carolina are much larger than were announcing 15 years ago. So when you're having announcements, Toyota's up in Randolph County at 5,000, Fujifilm is growing exponentially in Wake County. It's everybody kind of thinking through, what do you mean when you're saying you're helping to support the workforce development? So when we started talking to community college presidents and to workforce boards, it really was a conversation of saying, no one of us is going to respond to this effectively alone. If we don't start thinking more as a collaborative, we're all going to be challenged as institutions, both serving the employers and serving the community. So it wasn't convincing people to come into AdvanceNC. It was more creating a structure, because everybody was looking for, how do we respond to this more effectively? They were, trying to. We've always done smaller partnerships. We as a community college have partnered regularly with another college over here, or 2 colleges over there, to respond to a particular scenario. But in this situation, we're really thinking about responding to an entire sector. We're thinking about advanced manufacturing as an entire sector, and how do you respond to that? And so the idea of recreating the ecosystem or restructuring the ecosystem was more about creating the template for the structure and inviting others in. that it really was convincing anybody that this was the right thing to do. I think everybody was moving down those very similar paths of how do we do this? How do we do this better? You know, the work, and Erin referenced it before, now is the actual doing, like aligning all of these partners, getting them to move in similar directions, bringing those employers in, because while employers are not partners, employers are the stakeholders. They're the reason for this. So they are part of every conversation. And how do you bring them into all of it so that they're seeing how to access the resource.
Well, there's my segue right there then, Margaret. Describe to us this collaborative, because on this slide, I do see employer partners, and I do see community members, and I do see colleges. So help us understand the broader ecosystem, not just the AdvanceNC collaborative.
Sure. So, I mean, I think the graphic here does a really nice job of thinking through. So you referenced the AdvanceNC platform. So this is the effort we did with Marty and his team to really make sure we had a presence, so we could pull these different pieces into a web platform that allowed easy access to think about how do you draw awareness to, how do you provide more information about, how do you give make the connectors between all of the resources, effectively create easy buttons around what we're working towards. So Erin will talk a little bit more about what some of our projects are, and they really hit on these things. But it really does get into, you know, back to the fact that all of these things happen together, and no one thing is separated. And so we are working towards that common curricula so that what happens at Central Carolina has resonance and value at Durham Tech when we're creating pathways, so that you can start your training with us, get your job that might take you to a different college's location, and want to finish towards a degree if you started in short-term training with that other institution, and be able to move that forward. And so we're really excited about pieces like that. How do we work with our workforce development boards to make sure that they are funneling people through and talking to people about the training and the jobs in the same way, and being able to support things like OJT in the same way, on the job training. This idea of what benefits the employer benefits the student, and how do we find those really key spaces of intersection is what we spend a lot of time on, and spent probably the last year on developing the initiatives that push those things forward.
It's like, you know what slides are coming. Erin, on the next slide, we're going to talk about some of those initiatives. But before we do, as you and I, Margaret, have discussed in the past, the state of North Carolina has, in my mind, a unique model to funding customized training as these major employer partners come into the state. So you mentioned Wolfspeed, we mentioned VinFast, Toyota, Fujifilm, I believe. How, just for the good of the group here today, can you describe to us North Carolina's funding model for customized training and these workforce development efforts?
Erin, I can start, or if you want to jump in, you're kind of living in the customized training world a little more directly anymore.
I'm happy to do that. Yeah, so North Carolina offers incentive packages to companies when they're looking at, opening a new site in North Carolina. And a lot of times those incentive packages include some workforce development funding, and more specifically, customized training funding, which those are funds that go through the North Carolina Community College system to the community college that is in whatever service area the company chose to land in. So for example, both VinFast and Wolfspeed for their new sites chose Chatham County. Chatham County is in Central Carolina's community college's service area. So the funding for that customized training was allocated to our college, but it's not, we don't get a blank check or even a check in some lump sum written to us when that project or when those funds are awarded to us. And we work closely with the company to build out a customized training plan specific to their needs and try to focus. We can do a lot of different topics in one project, but we try to focus on those positions that they're going to be hiring in large numbers. For example, Wolfspeed's new site, we're focusing on their operators and their technicians. So we build out a training plan that's anywhere from 1 to 3 years long. We, estimate how many trainees we need to put through that, what the cost is going to be to run that training, to hire the trainers that will need to use the subject matter experts for those different topics that they need. And sometimes it's working with the company to build out specific curriculum, to buy equipment and so forth. But as we purchase equipment or as we run training classes, we then submit to basically be reimbursed for those funds from our system office. So they don't get, a lump sum. We don't get a lump sum. We get those funds as we conduct the training at the college.
And as those funds come your way, I think I heard you say that the funds are funneled to the community college in which the corporation lands, or at least the county in which the corporation lands. Is there a splash over effect so that while they might be funneled through you for VinFast and Wolfspeed, are you able to splash those other to outside of your boundaries to other neighboring community colleges?
Not typically, not with customized training funds.
Got it.
So what we do think about though, in this particular realm is what are we building? Like Erin works closely with Wolfspeed. She's building curriculum with them around those operator and technician positions for semiconductors. As we expand and as Wolfspeed starts hiring at rate, we can leverage AdvanceNC, share that structure. And so that splashover effect I think you're referencing, Marty, is not always necessarily direct dollars, but definitely the outcome of things that we might be building and pushing those out. And so, Randolph Community College serves Toyota because that's the county in which they landed, and Guilford Tech in close relation. But that's 5,000 people. And so you're starting to see Toyota now pushing out into, the other colleges, within their realm. And so I think that's one way customized training dollars extend themselves into other arenas and allow us to leverage those state dollars into a higher rate of return.
Got it.
Well,
No,
and
go
thanks,
ahead.
Margaret. I wasn't on the right train of thought there, but yes. So for example, we work closely with Durham Tech when we were developing our curriculum for Wolfspeed, and now in return, we ended up building new classes for their Siler City plant that their Durham location wants to offer Durham employees. So now we're, sharing some of our curriculum back with Durham Tech. So it's been a mutually beneficial relationship between us and Durham Tech, sharing curriculum back and forth, sharing information about equipment, and to go a step further, the equipment and such that we've bought with Wolfspeed's customized training plan belongs to the college now, so we are able to use that equipment for other programs as well.
Fantastic. Sorry, that was a curveball question, but you guys nailed it. Let's talk about those current initiatives then. Margaret, set the stage. Erin, I think you're in the thick of these. So can you describe some of the work that AdvanceNC is currently doing?
Yeah, Margaret, you want me to start?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we've got several things going on right now. Our website that we mentioned a few minutes ago, the platform that we worked with Marty and team to build, which is beautiful. We soft launched that website back in the summer, but there was a lot of transitions happening at the time and with some of these companies that we're working with. So we haven't really done a hard launch of that first because we've still got a lot of figuring out to do amongst our different organizations, the different colleges and stuff, because as you can imagine, we're not used to working together in this way. So it's taken quite a bit of time to figure that out and move us all in the same direction. So We just held a marketing strategy kickoff meeting last week where we invited all of the marketing staff or the public information officers for all of our community colleges and universities and workforce boards that are members of AdvanceNC. We brought them all to our campus last week to really level set, because some of them had some knowledge of AdvanceNC and some of them had never really heard of AdvanceNC until they got the invitation from me. We brought them all together and really, shared the story, the purpose of AdvanceNC, and then did a deep dive into the website and some of the other marketing assets that we've developed, and really just got their buy-in and their input on, how do we sell this? How do we tell this story? How do we get more employers on board? How do we get this message across within your institutions? As right now, it's been very much at the executive level where these conversations have been happening. But we want buy-in throughout the organization. So that is moving forward. We as an AdvanceNC, were awarded a grant through Education Design Lab. So we are working closely with them to develop several different micro pathways, targeting roles in the advanced manufacturing space. So we've got about 5 pathways that we are working to build with them. And then we've got another 4 or 5 identified that we'll start on next year. But that is going to be some shared curriculum paired with some durable skills, soft skills, whatever you want to call it, aimed at some of those high growth jobs in the AdvanceNC region. And so that will be shared across all of our community colleges, and our workforce boards are heavily involved in that work as well. We've also had what we call an employer engagement series. We hosted 2 of those in the fall. We're piloting this, and you'll see this across several of our initiatives, but we've got several pilots going right now that we're working with Wake Tech, Durham Tech, and Central Carolina to really figure out what that system will look like, or that framework will look like, and then share it with the rest of the region. But with Durham Tech and Wake Tech, we hosted 2 employer engagement series in the fall. The first one was at Wake Tech. The second one was at Durham Tech. We have our first one of the spring coming up in April at our campus. And that is where we have invited manufacturing employers across all of our service areas of those 3 colleges and brought them in to just talk about workforce challenges. So the first one we had in the fall, we were focusing on instructional capacity, which I think we'll talk about that more in a minute. But one of our biggest challenges is finding enough experts to come into the community college and train these students that will eventually be, the employees for these companies. But community colleges, we can't compete with industry pay. And so it's difficult sometimes to find enough people to stand in front of those classrooms and train up these future employees. So that has been the focus of a lot of our conversations in those series, but we've also started partnering together on meeting some of their needs. So one thing that came out of the second meeting in the fall was that they had a lot of internal promotions to supervisor levels that had no supervisory experience otherwise, and we're really struggling to make that transition from an individual contributor to supervising a whole team. So we're actually sponsoring a new supervisor training in May for any of those companies who want to send some of those folks free of charge to any of those companies. We're also working on that employer recruitment piece to get more employers on the platform. So we're looking at using some of our grant funding through Education Design Lab to sponsor some new employers joining the site. And then the common curriculum for entry-level skills. So right now we're focusing on that entry-level advanced manufacturing knowledge, and we're working another pilot with Durham Tech and Wake Tech to offer the SME Tooling U Certified Manufacturing Associate. We are launching that curriculum through a Con Ed course at all 3 colleges, hopefully this summer, but definitely by the fall. And then engineering pathways, I have not been as involved with that one, but Margaret can speak to that a little better.
Sure, and I'll just wrap it up with that. So, again, AdvanceNC is really thinking about the entire career pathway. So through the community colleges, through short-term training on to certificates and degrees, but ultimately also thinking about being able to go on to that four-year institution and thinking around engineering. We're obviously not changing anybody's engineering degree programs, but we have a couple of universities within the system who deal with our technical engineering programs. But what we have had some really productive conversations with NC State in particular is their engineering education program. And it speaks actually to Erin's reference to the fact that we need more people in front of classrooms to be able to think about how do we put more people into the pipeline. If it's a capacity issue and we're restricted at the classroom level because we don't have enough instructors, how do we help address that? And state has a engineering education program. So those engineers who want to be educators, and they need to have experiences in the classroom. And so how do we have a win-win relationship with them so that they're being able to teach as part of their program, and we're getting the benefit of some highly qualified, highly motivated individuals in front of our students. And so we're looking for how we have these wins across programs and across scenarios. And the engineering one is just an example of that.
That's great. And thank you for touching on the instructional capacity as well. I know that's a difficult problem to solve for many folks around the country on how do we increase our capacity of those instructors. So it sounds like you all have a solution that we're working on to get more educators in its current state before those educators come through the pipeline. Does North Carolina have a working solution to address some of those capacity issues?
So I mean, I think that we always, lean into our legislators, and we've been fortunate the last several years, around them thinking around what are some of these high cost programs and putting some dollars in those at the state level to give some assistance. But it's a ongoing issue, right? It's community colleges are not going to compete with pay with industry.
Yeah.
So we're really, and we kind of historically go to somebody who might be retired and looking for that second job. And that's still an avenue, but we're really thinking about all kinds of different streams now. So the military obviously is one, but we've also started talking to some of our employers around their new hires, providing space for them to teach with us. So teaching for us provides a skill set back to the employer when they're looking for leadership skills, communication skills, training skills within the organization themselves. So we're starting to build up some of that conversation with, they may not be ours full time, but can we partner together to think through what does some of that solution look like? Because our capacity issue at the end of the day becomes their talent issue. And so the more they can help us figure this out, the better we all are. So I think we're leaning into multiple places to try to think through it. I know no more than anyone else do we have a perfect solution. So if somebody wants to donate several $1 million, we'll set up endowments and put faculty everywhere.
We're looking for donors always. All right, last slide here, and then I have a couple questions before we open it up to everyone else. Let's just talk about what's the outlook here for AdvanceNC. What's the vision? What are you trying to achieve both in the short term and then the longer term? And how do we fund something like this if other folks are trying to establish something that you've created here?
So our 1 year goal is to really start building this momentum that Erin talked about in the projects that we're doing, right? As she's really leading all of those projects, each of those builds on each other and starts working on that momentum. So we're seeing increased value to what it is that we're doing with AdvanceNC. I think within this next year, I don't think I'm surprising Erin. We're going to be working to bring the K-12s in a much more intentional way. as you know, Erin referenced, it's challenging to bring in 11 community colleges, 7 workforce boards, 3 universities, 2 affiliate members just in that space. And we're 19 counties, so thinking through K-12 has always been a bit of a struggle, but we're looking at some partners to be able to give us some support structure for that. And we really will be thinking about how do we pull K-12s into this conversation as we're building out these pathways with EDL, as we're thinking about these, credit for prior learning, shared curriculum structures, bringing in employers, because employers also always want to know who all is our potential employee, K-12, the military, the adults, so on. So I think that 1 year bleeding into the 3-year space is really, where we're at. And Erin, I don't know if you've got additional thoughts or insight into that kind of 1 to 3 year before we jump into the second half.
No, I mean, I think you really hit the nail on the head with the increasing the value of what we're doing. So, while we've already seen value in what we're doing and sort of rethinking the way we work together, and we understand that value, it's not as always as easy to communicate that value to employers. So some of the work we've got going on right now with the micro pathways and shared curriculum will be much easier to communicate to employers and help them understand the value that this ecosystem brings.
And I think our long-term goals kind of run into the funding sustainability structure. So we're actively having conversations with different philanthropies. So today, AdvanceNC is an effort of the willing. It is very much a grassroots scenario of everyone rolling up their sleeves saying, we know this is the right thing to do. And so we're going to add this to our list of things that we do in our regular jobs. But we've had conversations with lots of different philanthropies on how they can insert themselves to help us move to a place where this is in a much more sustainable financial scenario. We've got some funding models around how we have employers move onto the platform that gives some sustainability there as far as those pieces go. We also have the fortunate opportunity, one of our affiliate partners, My Future NC, which is very focused on post-secondary credentials within the state, has put out for us a legislative ask so that there's some legislative funds, hopefully, that come through for AdvanceNC to provide us the resources to hire someone full-time as the project manager. So Central Carolina has carved out some of Erin's time to do this, a pretty significant chunk of Erin's time to do this. And so, but if we could hire someone in that said all day, every day, this is what I do, that would be amazing. And there's some dollars in there also for awareness and marketing kind of pieces that we need to keep moving forward. So I think our sustainability is building that momentum of value, building that momentum of outcomes that the partners see, but bringing in some of those external resources that allow us to say this can move beyond the effort of the willing. It can move into something that stands on its own feet and can continue that. And I think the conversations we're having now with philanthropies are really going to, in the next year, move us into those spaces.
Lovely. You're 2 or 3 years-ish into AdvanceNC. How do folks get started in a model like this? So consult with those on the call here. How do we get started? What are those major hurdles that are gonna happen, and how do we push through those?
So find the core team of champions. I think all of our partners are amazing. That said, there's a core team of our partners who are more highly engaged. Find that team and build from there. And recognize that depending on the project, some are going to be more vocal and engaged than others. It's just kind of gonna be the nature of it, and let that be okay. Like, we've got a couple of projects where we've said, this is an AdvanceNC project, everybody agrees to it, but it may not engage everybody to the same level, and that needs to be okay. The other side of that, though, is we've been really intentional about looking for wins for all the partners. Being mindful of what people measure. So community colleges, we measure by students, we measure by hours of instruction, we measure by credentials awarded. Workforce boards, they measure something different. They're measuring people getting jobs, people moving forward, those sorts of things. And while we're really concerned about people getting jobs, how those come into our metrics is a little different. So we've had to be really intentional about being at the table and respecting that, who's got which measures. How do we understand that what we're doing can boost somebody's measures, and that it's a win, right? We can't have any of the partners not feeling like they're just participating for everybody else's success. Everyone needs to be able to see places of success within that. But I think what I've realized, at least, I'm not sure about Erin, is we had everybody come in. Everybody was really super excited. We had the big event, pictures everywhere, media, the big splash. And we started doing the work. When we started doing the work, it just kind of naturally, in any sort of group, we've all been on boards. There's a couple of folks who are really invested and are going to help you move forward. So find those champions, find those employer champions that bite in and say, we're the early adopters, we're going to get in here with you, and help, put some of these pieces forward. And find some early wins. I think that's one of the things. We took on some really big projects that had pretty long ramps. And I think one of the things in retrospect is I would have chunked some of those down so we could have some more visible wins all along the way. And Erin, I don't know what your impression is of all of that.
Well, I would agree with all of that. I would say, especially in terms of those small wins, just making sure that you're communicating them frequently. Because like we've both mentioned, that this is the effort of the willing. We all have other full-time jobs. So it is easy for the AdvanceNC initiatives and these goals, that these larger goals, to get lost in the day-to-day. So making sure you've got someone that can communicate those wins and the work that's happening, the progress that's happening regularly. But one other thing I would say is, for anyone wanting to start something like AdvanceNC, is don't be afraid to reset. So we've had, I think, twice in just the last year that we've said, okay, I think like Margaret just mentioned, wanting to chunk some of those things down to smaller projects and whatnot. Don't be afraid to say, look, I think we might have bit off more than we could chew. So let's focus on these few things that, number one, can maybe bring us some early quick wins, and keep the momentum going. And maybe these other things aren't something that really benefits the majority of this group, and maybe we put those on the back burner for a little while.
The last thing I'd say is have somebody in that project manager role. Erin's saying, make sure communication is there and make sure it's there consistently, and that you're getting information out. Erin's the one that keeps us on a calendar. Erin keeps things moving. She manages all of these different, she doesn't run all the committees, but she knows where all the committees are. And really kind of keeps her finger on that. I think you've got to have somebody who, even if it's today part of their job, who's really ensuring communication is happening consistently. We've got an AdvanceNC newsletter that goes out. Erin makes sure that that's created and it gets out there. Having that person who does that, and you can't have Erin, but you need an Erin person to really help make sure those things go forward.
Got it. And Samantha, thank you for joining us. You've been monitoring the chat, I believe.
Yeah, we've got a few questions in the chat. The first question is there a focus on shared data, as in TPM, in planning and defining which college is responsible for what?
So not TPM. I think TPM, so if you don't know, it's TPM, Talent Pipeline Management, came out of the US Chamber. It is a really great program, kind of in that whole sector partnership space, bringing employers in, thinking around how you build that out. It is also big, really big, as far as just its structure and running a TPM. So, but there's parts of TPM that we think about when we're doing this. And so Erin had mentioned one of the projects is the education design lab around the pathways. Not every college ultimately will implement every pathway or every component of a pathway. And so thinking through, we work with employers to get the KSAs, think about what those pathways need to be. We're looking at labor market information. What are the jobs that have great wages, great opportunities, that there are pathways that you can get this training for this job, and that branches with more training into more opportunities and more growth. The side of that from the education side is, we have very small rural colleges that are part of AdvanceNC, all the way up to Wake Tech, which is the largest community college in the state. And I think from a student number perspective, the largest post-secondary institution in the state. So Piedmont Community College in Caswell and Person County, very rural, to Wake Tech. What they'll ultimately be able to offer as we're thinking about these pathways is going to look different. And that's okay, because what we're thinking about is what's going to make sense for Piedmont and the people who live in Person and Caswell counties as they're thinking about jobs and their growth, and ultimately how they'll be able to affect economic development as they build out their capacity and their capabilities. They may not do all of them or all of them through the entire pathway. Like, you may take a short-term credential at Piedmont, but that will articulate and transfer when you want to finish up your degree at Durham Tech, which is county over, and a bigger college that they'll be able to do different things. So, so not formally TPM, but taking some lessons learned and some pieces out of that TPM model. From a community college perspective, some data sharing. Data warehouse colleague, if you're in North Carolina, that's our system. That lets us do some data sharing. We're thinking with EDL again about how we're going to track students who go through these pathways. How are we going to track success and college credentials earned? There's a whole other conversation on third-party credentials and tracking that we will not get into today. And then we're also having these, the workforce boards are having conversations around how are they thinking about data. We haven't gotten into the MOUs and the legal stuff between the colleges and the workforce boards and data sharing. That's, again, a whole other interesting space.
That was great. Thank you. The next question, Erin and Margaret, is they are wondering if you can elaborate on the AdvanceNC platform and what you share and how you're using that. While you do that, I'll drop the link in the chat for everyone.
So Erin, I'll let you take the platform.
I thought you might. Be sure to take a look at it. Like I said, we're pretty proud of it. So the platform serves really at least two main purposes. One is when we started building this platform with Marty and team, we said we need to make manufacturing sexy. So especially in our region, a lot of folks still have this stigma around manufacturing jobs as being really dirty, grungy, and just not great place, not the place everybody wants to work. But that is not the reality. There are still some places like that, but a lot of the manufacturing spaces now, especially in our region, are very clean, very sterile locations. They've also got really great career pathways. So you can start as an operator or technician, and a lot of those companies will pay for your education and your training. and you can have a very long, lucrative career at these companies. So that is one of the main purposes of the platform, is to show people the really cool different jobs that there are in our region in manufacturing. So we've got 7 different sectors of the manufacturing industry represented in the AdvanceNC region. And there is a quick overview of each of those sectors on the website, so that you can learn about what that sector does, the kind of companies in it, and the purpose they serve. So there's also a really neat tool that if you are looking for a job but have no idea which one of these sectors you should start with, you can answer a couple questions on this little quiz and it will point you in the right direction. We've got the 2 employer partners on the site. Wolfspeed is the one that's fully built out. There's several different learning modules developed that take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes to go through and learn about Wolfspeed as a company, what it's like to work there. And then you can go even further to learn about specific roles like an engineer role, technician role, specialist role, and really learn what a day in the life of one of those positions looks like. And similar to the assessment tool that will point you to the right industry sector, there is a tool with other questions about, your military background, your education and career goals that will point you to a specific role that might be a good fit for you at Wolfspeed. But the primary purpose of the platform is just career awareness and exposure. Because like we've said, we've got a lot of manufacturing jobs in this region, so we need to recruit all that we can, and that website is helping to serve that purpose.
That was great. I think we have time for one more question. And the question is, there was a reference early on to business and industry leadership teams. So is the approach to AdvanceNC built specifically on the BILT model?
So similar to the TPM answer, there are elements of built in this. So I'm not sure if everybody's from a community college or they know what built is, but it really is that one that says, kind of flip the advisory committee model that a community college typically uses, put employers in the front and let them drive the conversation. They review your KSAs of your curriculum. They make recommendations on additions, changes, what's really going on in their workforce today. And you as a college, your appropriate response is to make appropriate changes. And we offer them, we do that. We're flipping our advisory models here. We're not doing a full built in the sense of this particular program and breaking down all the KSAs, at least not at this juncture. But that idea of putting employers into the driver's seat, that idea of, I was saying, the employers are leading the conversation on what are the KSAs they value. A little bit of perspective, when we were trying to get to a single credential for short-term training, we got job titles and descriptions across a whole bunch of companies, and it varied. Like, we're talking the first 2 or 3 entry-level jobs, and everything has a different title, all kinds of different stuff in there. And we distilled that down to the primary KSAs and pushed it back and said, is this right? And kind of used that as our barometer. And then we lined that up against the potential third-party credentials that we wanted to think about using. So we're using the premises of built in the same way that we're using components of TPM to get to what we want. And I guess so it's a little bit of an amalgamation of things, given that what we're trying to build is a little different. And so I hate to say we are, but we're not, but that's kind of how we're thinking about built in TPM.
All right, great. And we have one more 30-second or less question. In its ideal state, if I'm 16-year-old, how does AdvanceNC change my career path?
I think AdvanceNC of a 16-year-old lets you see the extent of that career path. I think a 16-year-old particularly sees a job. And AdvanceNC, one of our intentional components is, what is that whole opportunity pathway that's out in front of you? And how do you even think about getting there? And that's really one of the goals, is not just there is a pathway, but what do you do to move along it? And that's something we'd really like to achieve.
That's a great answer. All right, Marty, back to you to wrap it up.
Erin and Margaret, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your wisdom. I hope this helps both North Carolina, but then also, of course, other states and groups of colleges, workforce boards, and other teams trying to cultivate similar models. It's inspiring, as I said, to kick us off of what you're doing, and I'm excited to see where this goes in the next 2-3 years. As we close up, a question for you and then a teaser for us at Workforce Connect with another episode of Workforce Insights, a webinar for next month. But first, the question for you, Erin and Margaret, if folks wanted to get in touch with you, what is the best way to do that and learn more about this AdvanceNC model?
Erin?
mroberton@cccc.edu.
Well, that was the wrong decision on my part. So, but I also think you can go to the AdvanceNC site. There's a form there. Erin looks at it every day. All the emails that come in through that form.
Yes, that,
Perfect.
what she said. But also, they can feel free to share our email and they can reach out to us that way as well.
Perfect. All right. Then the teaser here as we close up. Next month, Workforce Connect is bringing forth Workforce Insights from Ohio, so not too far from you. We are going to learn from Michelle Ward, the Director of Development at Columbus State Community College. They are fully immersed in skills training and have been working with Intel and amongst other major corporations to develop skills training for them. So we're going to learn from her and her team on all things skills training. That is April 25. There'll be a webinar sign up for that as well. I hope Erin and Margaret, you can join us. I know they might be a small bit of a rival state, or at least they might look at you as a rival state, but still we can learn from each other here. And we're going to close out with, if you want to get in touch with me at Workforce Connect, it's quite simple, marty@workforceconnect.com. And we will send out these slides to folks in a recording of the webinar as we close down here.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Marty. Thanks, Sam.